Let's link up with Krista on the FYX. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
What is up, guys? It is Coach Krista, and I am back on our latest episode of The FYX. Let's link up. Today, we are linking up with my brand new friend that I met via IG, which seems to be the cool way to meet people these days. I don't know if people use this line on you at all, but they say never trust a guy with two first names. So we'll see if we can trust you at the end of the episode. But this is Mr. Webb Travis, not to be confused with Travis Webb, which he definitely gets a lot. And I'm sure that'll come up in conversation. And this guy is just an all-around rock star of a coach. I would call him in the category of a master coach or master trainer level, as someone who has been in the fitness industry for over 15 years, has loads of certifications and all that jazz. But his latest venture, and really the big conversation that we will focus on today, is his newest app that he's launching, Turf Online Training. I hope I said that correctly. And he is super excited for that to release in literally like 2 weeks. So February 2021, coming down the pipe in just days. I'm sure you're gearing up for all of your campaigning and, final details and final touches on the application. And I'd love for you to walk us through that once I give you the floor and we get really into the details of this episode. But super excited to have you on the show. Always appreciate someone who takes the opportunity to reach out. And I think that will definitely come up in our conversation here, because as you and I have shared with each other being in the personal training space, that just sheer who cares? Someone could reject me. Fuck it. It doesn't matter. Has definitely been an attitude of yours that's absolutely heightened your success. So I think for anyone who's listening to this today and is someone who's kind of on the come up in the fitness industry, they will find a lot of value in that message. So I'm excited to have you on the show, and thanks for being here. With that said, give me I know I add a little color, but I like to pitch this to my guests. Give me your 45-second elevator pitch. Who the heck are you? Why should we care about you? And I won't time you. So whenever you're ready. Go for it.
It's a tough act to follow your intro, Krista. So hi, everyone. My name's Webb Travis, Coach Webb Travis, however you want to call it. I've been in the industry for 15 years. I went to undergrad at a little place called SUNY Plattsburgh, upstate New York. Shout out to all my New York State people. I'm originally New York City born, New York at heart. Love it.
Love the tri-state area.
Totally. Explains my personality. I'm very black and white. I cut to the chase. I don't like bullshit, and I really enjoy helping people be successful in their personal life, in their fitness life, and just their overall well-being. Why should you listen to me? Because I'm here to help give tips to trainers or try to become freelance entrepreneurs. Tell you about when I worked in a corporation, when I worked for Equinox for over 8+ years, what was my success, what was my struggles, and more importantly, what did I learn that I continue to give out to everyone I come in contact with, both training clients and trainers alike, to help them become better people.
I love it. And I think it's awesome really seeing the evolution, and you can hear in just bits and pieces of what you shared so far about how you've taken all of your practical experience in the gym and as a coach working with clients, both one-on-one and in the group capacity. And now being like, hey, I've developed this not so secret sauce, but I'd like to share that with other people, because at the end of the day, I think we can all agree, and you and I have discussed this as well. If you get into the fitness industry with the intention of just helping people feel better, literally feel that, forget about looking a certain way, but feeling healthier and feeling confident and comfortable in their own skin, doesn't matter if we're technically competition on paper. And I think you certainly embody that as someone who's really, lived on both coasts, probably have seen a lot of different training styles in your day, and has worked with a ton of different personalities throughout your experience. So I'm excited to get into that a little more. And I'm not sure if I told you this, but I have one other question that I ask every guest. It's nothing crazy, but it is, I'm a big coffee drinker, caffeine addict. I'm about to launch my own coffee label. It'll probably it's coming in the next few days. So I think the same kind of 2 or 3 day window that we launch this episode and actually air it, it might be officially live. But
All right.
Doing it with a New York City coffee shop called Have a Nice Day Coffee. And in the spirit of caffeine, I ask all of my guests, what is your go-to coffee order? You know, maybe you have two because you like brew one thing at home and then order something else out in one of the California coffee spots that you like to hit up. But what do you like to sip on in the morning and throughout your day?
So I love coffee, and being from New York as well, you know, like there's coffee shops everywhere.
Yeah.
Fast forward, when I moved to California, my now brother-in-law, his name is Jeremy Crichton, he actually owns a coffee shop.
Look at that.
Called Common Room Roasters, and he is from Australia, so he knows good coffee.
So cool.
He's from Melbourne, and so it's Melbourne created. They roasted it in Newport Beach, and they sent it. And his brand is sold in Italy. It's in all over LA. There's certain shops in New York City. You can get it online.
Nice.
CommonRoomRoasters.com.
I gotta look it up now for sure.
It's awesome. I'm really sipping on it right now.
Perfect. Look at that. So on brand.
Oh, totally. So, but I'll usually start my morning off with bulletproof coffee, typically 6 days of the week, and I use regular ghee. So I'll use a little shot of MCT oil. Ghee butter. I'll French press my coffee, and I'll throw it in a blender, and there we go. I'm good to go for about 2 cups, and holds me off until I break my fast around 9 o'clock.
Nice. So. And what got you onto the bulletproof trend? Did you ever dabble in keto? Do you dabble in keto, or is it just something that you enjoyed? Is it like an intermittent fasting thing? Where'd it come from for you?
My wife actually made it for me when we were dating. Nice. She made me my first cup of bulletproof coffee, and I never ever experienced it before. I'm like, this is so good. And she was like, yeah, it's supposed to be a thing. She's like, Monk's been doing it. And so I got more curious about it. So I did more research, and I started researching and listening to podcasts from Dave Asprey and the Bulletproof, and actually went to a lecture where he was one of the keynote speakers.
Nice.
And I loved it. And I actually bought into it and believe what it stands for. And so I've got a lot of clients that go onto Bulletproof Coffee in the last 2-3 years. And not everyone has seen success, but I would say majority of my clients have seen success. And again, the success is based on what is their body type. Because if you're an ectomorph, skinny, long, lean, like Taylor Swift or Ryan Gosling, they don't require much fat. So bulletproof is kind of useless for them. But someone like myself, a mesomorph, or someone who's a little stockier or curvier, like an endomorph, they would benefit well from the bulletproof coffee. So
that's awesome. And I think, hey, practice what you preach. So that's great that, you know, you test. I actually was just like, I was texting you. I was on a call with a company that's in the recovery space and moving from just like physical recovery tools into CBD. And I really was interested in partnering with them because they gave me like a full 30-minute presentation on what's in their product, why their CBD is different than other things on the market. And I was appreciative of that because I feel like it's so easy to get caught up in so many different brands approaching you and them just trying, like, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. I want to talk to you about this and that. And I respected the fact that they wanted to take the time before they even sent the product to educate each person on it so that they could be confident that what you were putting out on social media was accurate, right?
So, totally. I'm a firm believer of that. And I actually, my same brother-in-law actually owns a CBD company.
Damn, I got to meet this guy. Shoot.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's called Wild by Nature. And he worked on it for about 2 years, and it's finally up and running. They have it in the US market. It's in Japan now. It's in the UK. They're putting it in Australia.
Well, I think you found my next podcast guest. What do you think?
I'll set you up with him.
Definitely be on. That's awesome. And I'm sure he has a great accent. So like, we're all here for that.
You don't even listen to me. You just hear the accent. You're like, what?
Wow.
Yes, of course.
That's amazing. That's so funny. So let's talk more about your journey and your career. And, you know, sometimes I like to go in chronological order, but I think for you, it would make sense to kind of talk about the present, and then we can back into how you got here, unless you feel otherwise. But I'd love to talk about your app and really in the context probably of COVID, maybe that pushed you to do this a little quicker. I think from the experience that you've already shared with me, this was coming and was inevitable for you as your evolution of your brand and who you are as someone who came up through the very corporate side of fitness and then was making the path and paving the way to do it on your own. But tell me about the impetus for the program. Give me like a little bit of the detail on what it's going to look like without giving too much away. But why should someone there's lots of apps out there. So why should someone want to work with you?
You're right. There are lots of apps out there. And I have a colleague in New York that her and I piggyback off each other and kind of keep each other going from a camaraderie standpoint. And one of the things that I always tell people, and that I continue to see, is turn down the volume. There's so much noise out there. And I'm not saying I'm your guru, or I'm not saying that Coach Krista is your guru. And I want people recognize that there's a coach for everybody and not one person is a coach for everyone.
Totally.
Okay. So I might work well with you and Jane and John and Paul, but then Rachel and Tim and Tom don't want anything to do with me, which is fine. All right. They're going to go to whoever they want to go to. The app itself is to benefit everyone that has been suffering from the pandemic. Last year when COVID started and lockdown went down, I had to stop training my clients in person. Everyone did. And I was going virtual and I was giving out free everyday Instagram live classes at 10 a.m. I did it for like probably 6 weeks straight. And so finally I was like, all right, I'm going to try and do what everyone else is doing, try to go into a private Zoom platform. All right, everyone, if you want to be in this workout, it's going to be $5, $10. And I only got a handful of people to actually do it. And I was very confused. I was like, when I'm streaming, I have 100 plus people that would go in. And so I started reaching out to some people that would follow me and do my classes. And they're like, hey, yeah, I'd happily pay, but so-and-so is doing it for free still. That person is doing it for free. They're like, okay, fair enough. So it forced me to take a step back and recalibrate. And my app that's launching is going to be customized to 4 different kinds of programs. One is the bodyweight burn. Bodyweight burn is a total bodyweight workout with everything from animal flow, bodyweight movements, yoga movements, total body strength, from plyometrics to isometric to isokinetic, all the jazz. Second program that's going to be in it is going to be called Metcon with dumbbells. All right. So a lot of people were able to get a hold of dumbbells and that's all they were able to get a hold of.
Yes. So true.
Make sure you have a workout with dumbbells that you can get an efficient, effective, and sweaty, fun workout. And a lot of them are anywhere from 25 to 35 minutes, depending on how hard or long you want to push yourself. Third program is called the Daily Hit, high intensity interval training. Typically it's 25 minutes or less, and it's dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells, wall ball, whatever you have. And then the last one is a strength training program for those that still have full total gym access. All right. That one's going to be, some people in Florida have all the gyms are open. There are some gyms here in California that are open still, but the corporate side of them, they kind of shut down for a little bit.
Right. No, that's great. And I guess a good piggyback question off of that is, other than just knowing circumstances and what equipment people have available, why was it important to you and your brand, and really maybe even tie in your experience as someone who has taught such a variety? Because I think it's unusual to find people who are both personal trainers and Group X instructors who have had success in both areas to the extent that you have. And I would imagine people have said that to you before. But why was it important to you to offer all of those different approaches for people, regardless of like regardless of their fitness ability, just in terms of like the different options and the variety?
It's just a demographic thing. Some people can afford equipment, some people cannot. I've had people that I did a series of online training programs last year, from 6-week challenges to 12-week challenges to 8-week challenges.
Were those kind of like your test markets, like what hit?
Yeah, test markets to see what hit. And predominantly most of them was dumbbells or less. All right, dumbbells or less. And I found that more understandable and recognized that would be a better market. But I also recognize that, again, people have access to stuff and people are getting more equipment over time. So who knows, you might buy the program, buy the app, download it to your phone, and you start with body weight. And then in 2 months, you realize you can afford dumbbells. So you buy a pair of dumbbells, or you buy 2 pairs of dumbbells. Like now you're doing body weight and you're doing my Metcon dumbbell workout. And then you eventually get a hold of a kettlebell, and then you can be like, hey, now I can do all 3 programs. I wanted to be I want people to be able to log in and realize like, I got 4 programs to choose from today. What kind of mood am I in? Or how much time do I have? Because some of those programs, again, I said workouts are going to be 20, 25 minutes. Some, if you want to do a strength training program, it can be a 45-minute workout, sometimes an hour.
Right. And I'm glad you too, because I did want to emphasize that as well. I mean, what are your thoughts on, in my opinion, I think this whole idea of like the 20-minute express kind of workout, COVID has kind of amplified that in some ways, because a lot of my clients have said to me, one of the reasons why they love Peloton, it's not for the spin classes per se. It's because they can go on there, and if they like legit only have 10 minutes, at least they did something. And because they don't have to deal with this whole process of like going to the gym, putting on their sneakers, like getting in the car, like blah, 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 checking in, they're more inclined to look at their watch and be like, okay, I have 30 minutes until this next meeting. Like I can actually feasibly do something.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so
I think that's cool.
I want to be able to be easy for people. And I'm partnering up with, you're probably familiar with it, Wattify.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Wattify, so it's turf.wattify.com is going to be the interface that I'm using. And I'm actually part of one of their beta groups. I'm one of the very first people that are trainers / fitness influencers that are doing it, because obviously originally Wi-Fi came out
was like super
for CrossFit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Street parking has proven otherwise, and it's grown
street
massively.
Parking is like so fascinating. I found out about them. I used to do all of my, like when I first got into fitness and I started dabbling in the nutrition space, I went through a macro coaching program with Stronger You. And so many people use street parking. Like I had never heard of it. And so I just started Googling it. And I think it's such a cool concept.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they do a great job. I love the programs that they do. They're very interactive, and it's it's challenging. So in the same concept that I'm doing, if you want to push yourself, you can.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
And what's the impetus behind the name? How'd you come up with it?
So turf. So I want you to be able to work out on your turf on your terms. That's a sales pitch. All right. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're in your backyard, if you're in your garage, if you're stuck in your apartment, if you are able to go out in a street, or you're able to get to a gym or turn your garage into a gym. It's your workout on your turf on your terms. Okay. And that is the biggest selling point for everyone. That is going to happen for the next year, 2 years, 3 years. I was talking to you briefly about it last week, that there was an article that came out and it was talking about how roughly 59% of the 100,000 plus people that they polled will not be returning to their gyms for 2021. That means of the 100,000 people that they polled, 59,000 will not be going back to their gyms.
And now, did that poll specify, because I don't think we talked about the details, but I do remember you sharing that stat with me. Did that break down any details in terms of the type of gym that those people were frequenting, or it was just
It did not. But if you think about it doesn't matter if it's a gym, if it was like Planet Fitness, where it's $15, $19 a month, or you go to Equinox, where you're paying $200, $300 a month, depending on which flagship club you're in or whatever.
Yeah.
So it'd be a wide,
I'm curious more so because like I would be super curious to then do a breakdown of like boutique class oriented fitness studios only that weren't a box gym, because, and I think it's like the market like sentiment, it just definitely could be different even from coast to coast to different regions, age groups, whatever it is. Because I think like this doesn't necessarily matter, especially with your kind of perspective on all of it, because you've already hit on this multiple times. I've heard you say the word experience several times. I think that with like the millennial age group and even younger, with all the TikTokers out there, we'll call them. I think for them, and I see this behavior in my friends and what they spend money on and what they choose to spend money on, experiential activities and gifts and things like that are so important. People are more willing to spend money on them. And now COVID has deprived them of that I also think people would spend more money if they could, because they want that like human interaction so much so, or would even just be like, you know what, like I'm over this situation. I need to be around people. Like, so I'm going to go back and do XYZ. So I think the gyms and the concepts in the fitness industry that are going to stand out are going to be the types of brands that really capitalize on that feeling that you can create an experience virtually. I mean, I'd love your thoughts as someone who had a lot of success at Equinox, and please give us some context of kind of your journey from personal training there and then into the group X space because of how it happened for you. And even like I know you got a little pushback from trying to like wear the two hats because it's not common. You know, what was it like for you to start training on Zoom? Because I'll be honest, like I kind of hated it at first. Like I have so much energy. It was like really tough for me to do it the way I wanted to. So I'd love to know how you kind of felt about it. Like, did you have to do any like mental prep with yourself to get over the hurdle to still deliver the same value?
It wasn't, I guess you could say it was mental prep. For me, I would have to actually space out the Zooms. I couldn't stack them like I used to stack clients. And instead of it being an hour session, it was probably like a 40 to 45 minute session for one. And number two, I just needed to be able to get up and move around. Even if I did the Zoom standing, my neck would bother me, my lower back would hurt. And I started to have the problems that my clients came to me with.
Totally. I feel like I'm so, even just sitting here right now, I'm like looking at myself being like, why are you sitting like that?
Yeah, I'm like this. I'm trying to come back up. So it was, if anything, it was just the preparation. Make sure that just like when you go into class, do you have your water? Did you go to the bathroom? Are you fed? Do you have a snack? Are you going to be able to focus? Is your phone on silent? You can't, like, I was using my laptop at times. I was using my iPad at times. one time my iPad died and I panicked. I get the phone and call the client back, put the phone back on. I'm like, I'm really sorry. Where were we? Like, it was definitely really, really challenging for me.
Yeah.
And I did this after about 3-4 months after pandemic started. I started to slowly bring clients back, and I was changed my whole cleaning protocol, changed the whole stretching protocol. I used to stretch clients at the end of our sessions. We didn't do that anymore. I still don't do that. And I went and invested in one of the, it's like a fogger that you put the disinfectant spray in, and basically it's like you've ever
I've
seen Ghostbusters? I call it the proton pack. I just go around and blast everything the client touches.
Yeah.
And we wear masks, all that fun jazz.
So how has that felt for you to finally get back in? Like, what was the feeling like of, going from Zoom to like actually doing a workout in person where you're like so hyped up?
I was very hyped. I was very relieved, and it was good to get that camaraderie and energy again back in the room. And just giving the clients what they want. They're paying for my time. They're paying to see me in person. It's a different kind of energy than being on a Zoom call.
Totally.
But then in the back of our head, it's all the fear of like, oh, what if she has COVID? What if he has COVID?
Or if you're doing it, are you going to like set yourselves back like a while if something happens? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm training them. I'm taking the risk. I'm like, if I get sick or they get sick, I have to shut down for 2 weeks.
Right.
Not make money, blah, blah, blah. So
no, it's definitely hard. And it seems to me, I was just on the last phone call I had, the person I was talking to is also in California. And we were just talking about how it's really funny what people's perception is of what they consider strict COVID guidelines, depending on like where they are in the country, right? I was in Arizona recently, and to me, it felt like super casual, especially for my proximity to New York. And I'm sure you would feel the same way, because I have heard that California is pretty intense and strict.
We're strict pretty much everywhere else outside of Orange County. Where I'm in Costa Mesa, Newport, and I don't mean to bash on people, but it's kind of like people pretend it doesn't really exist here, or you wear the mask until the last second you don't have to, and then it's off. Yeah, there's like less than a half mile from my house. There's 3 restaurants, bars. They're all open,
like completely normal. Like no.
Go to the bar, 2 shots of tequila. Can I get an order of tacos?
Oh, and you can stand there.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah, this is how it is. And kind of the owners are like, hey, if you don't want to come, don't come.
Right.
So
it's interesting to hear that too, because then even just in terms of like California law with other things, like I was talking to someone else in California, and we were talking about like moving and in the middle of a pandemic and like getting evicted or like things like that. And like, I know that California law, and I'm sure this is a lot of states, we were just talking specific to that state, there's like a lot of protections in place that you can't really kick someone out because it's a pandemic.
No, my wife does real estate, and
there you
one
go.
of the tenants in one of the buildings, they basically decided to stop paying rent. You can't come after them, and you can't evict them. So they're like basically sitting rent free. They have like a 5-month grace period, so they can only be there for the next 5 months, not have to pay.
But is it in her case, like is that in context of residential or commercial?
That is a residential, but it's the same thing for commercial.
With commercial, what would happen if you went, and like, I know we're not in real estate, but I'm just curious. What would happen if you changed the locks like overnight? Can you do that or no?
It's a gray area.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's a gray area. They're protected right now by COVID. So
very interesting. Cool. Well, let's talk more about your background now that we kind of like have the picture of what the app is and where you're going with it. I want to know, as someone who has been both a personal trainer and a group fitness instructor, I'm going to be totally honest. I hate personal training. Like I don't like it. I am an extrovert. I feed off of the vibes of being in front of the room. I'm very theatrical, and I like this idea of multitasking. So for me, I love when a client is like, you have eyes in the back of your head, like you were over there with that client, and then all of a sudden you saw me and I was taking a break and I don't know how. Like I just really like that like environment. So what was that like for you? Because correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you started as a personal trainer and then began teaching some classes, and they just really took off.
So it actually started back in college.
Okay.
I was a personal trainer, and I was also a supervisor of my college gym. And I started doing group fitness classes just by sheer dumb luck. They needed someone to sub in for the Wednesday washboard abs class. So I popped in, taught the class. the manager was like, hey, you did a great job. Everyone had good feedback. Would you want to take over that class? Because that person's been flaking out. I'm like, sure, I can do it. It's in my schedule. And I kind of just fell into it. And next thing I know, I got my Mad Dog spin certification. Then they had me get my ISS kickboxing certification, and then my boot camp, AFA, so on and so forth. Went to Equinox, and Equinox was like, it's either group fitness or your personal training. And I was like, okay, I'll go to personal training. I can make more money.
Sure.
And so I originally went in not planning to be at Equinox for long. I actually graduated undergrad with my bachelor's in marketing, my bachelor's in kinesiology, and my master's in business admin.
Okay.
And my goal was to link up with an advertising firm. As I figured I'd find someone at Equinox that owned a firm or had connections.
Sure.
And that was the plan. But plans change. I became really good at my job within the first 2 months, and became full-time trainer within 2 months. And then with the next 3 months, I was in the top 3 of my club. And then 6 months later, I was in the number 1 of my club, and went all the way on and on to become, I was in the top 1% for the company wide all 8.5 years I was with them. And I was actually number 1 company wide 2 years in a row.
That's so cool.
They gave me an award called the Fusion Award, which was top productivity in both PT and group fitness combined. My hours combined, I surpassed the top producer, period. And anyway, so group fitness, same deal. Someone didn't show up for a 6 a.m. class. And I happened to be free. So I popped in and taught a boot camp.
Okay.
And all the people raved about it. And they're like, this guy was great. He's got to be the new Eddie Carrington was my manager time. He's still with Equinox. He's an amazing, super hilarious group fitness instructor and manager. Anyway, so they're like, Eddie, you got to get him to be our new boot camp instructor. And so I became the instructor by dumb luck. And it kind of just stayed under the radar. And it got to the point where finally an area manager from PT came in and was like, me and everyone checking their numbers. Oh, Webb, blah, blah. Yeah, you're doing 165 sessions, blah, blah. So I was doing over 40 sessions a week plus. And again, I was number 1 in the club. And then he found out that I was doing classes. He was like, wait, what do you mean you're doing group fitness classes? You can't do that. I'm like, I've been doing it for 8 months now. I have 4 classes a week, and I'm actually going to start teaching over the Mamaroneck Club. And I'm excited to do it because it's been helping me get business. He's like, no, those are hours you should be training people instead. And it went back and forth to the point where it ended up all the way on the president of personal training, David Harris. He came into the club. We all had a nice little meeting, everyone, regional directors and area managers and whatnot. And I basically had to give them my list of all my clients. And I was like, okay, here it is. I have 33 clients. 17 of them I acquired because of group fitness.
Sure.
And they come to my classes and they train with me on the regular. So they're actually on a program.
Especially because people, I think like this, and I'd love for you to, and I apologize for interrupting the story, but like, I'd love for you to include this piece too. I don't think that people, especially, and I might be speaking out of turn, but I'm just making assumptions like, Equinox does cater towards a higher level clientele, potentially more disposable income. But if someone can afford personal training twice a week, that's a pretty penny that they're paying. But if that's the only workout that they're doing twice a week, they're not going to see results. And they're coming because they want to work out with you. And I shared this with you. The reason I got into personal training and group fitness, I did the same. I started in college. But then for me to take the leap to quit my corporate job in finance and then do it full time was because of my personal trainer at the YMCA in Charlotte, who did the same exact thing as you. Like he taught 2 classes a week. It wasn't even a lot because he had so many personal training clients. He didn't have time to do any more than that.
Yeah.
And because places like the YMCA have like basketball and like stuff being shared, they just don't have the frequency of classes. But he got a bunch of clients out of that. And I always went to his classes too, because I only worked out with him once a week. So if I only worked out with him once a week, I had a gym membership somewhere else too to do group fitness. So yeah.
And that was the thing. That was my biggest point and the selling point. I was like, 1, I want to keep my clients happy. 2, if you look at the group activation of the member activation of people coming to the club, numbers had dramatically increased. And same thing. I'm like, my clients aren't going elsewhere to find fitness. They're coming here now. They're coming here 4 to 5 days a week instead of 2 to 3 days a week. So,
right.
and they're
Because I
spending more
bet
money in the
people were
shops and
doing
everything.
like I would imagine people were, they could come to you like twice a week. And then the other days they might go to Soul Cycle, and then they'd go to like Tone House or like all these other places, because they might want group X classes that, like, if it's not with you, then they're not necessarily going to go like confidently go around and use some of the machines and like put themselves through their own workout. Right.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's again, what led me. So then I started doing cycling. I started doing boot camp. I started teaching mat Pilates, started teaching
That's
abs
awesome.
class, best blood ever. I created a few classes for the company. One of them, my signature class was ropes and rowers. And that one went on to national wide. So it was good.
Very cool. So tell me then about the transition that you had in then creating programming and becoming a true like master trainer for them in that regard. What was that like for you? And how has that experience then gone on to shape kind of what I see as like the other pillar of your business and your brand, outside of you being a fitness coach yourself, teaching other people how to mimic what you're doing in the sense of creating their own online following and everything?
So I went on to, it was started as a beta group again. They started having me work with rampers. Rampers were oncoming new trainers in the clubs. And so I'd give them my experience. I would talk to them about my business experience and what was successful and what was not. And it started to come down to a little business seminar where it went from the first group of 5 people over the course of 8 months. My last seminar I had was like 200 plus trainers that came when I was down in Wall Street. And it was amazing. It was a lot of fun.
And was it optional for them to do that, or was Equinox require them?
Okay. No, it was optional. Show on up and I'll be the guy there to
give
you my input.
Yeah.
Get what you can get. And I kept it very simple. Equinox had 5 pillars that I really liked, that I took and I kind of twisted a little bit and made them more personable and made them more in line with who I am. But it was very simple. And it's just, see things through the member's eyes. All right. How do you want them to look at you? All right. How do you look? How are you dressed? Are you sloppy? Do you have food on your clothes? Is your shirt tucked in? Are your pants too low? Do you have socks on? Do you have BO? Whatever. Listen to your clients. Make sure that you're actually interacting with them. Don't just be there on your iPad. Miles, 7, 11, but you're actually just scrolling through Instagram. You're not actually doing your client's program. You're just screwing around. So being able to pick up where a conversation left off, like, hey, Coach Krista. Hey, Krista, how was your travel to Charlotte? Tell me about that time, your favorite class. What was your favorite workout that your old trainer used to do? And that would be me having a conversation with you a month later after you've been gone traveling, whatever.
Right. And then that makes you feel special. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it goes on and on. But basically, I would use those 5 pillars and I helped integrate it into business seminars for new trainers. And to the point where now, especially this past year, I was working with trainers in Tennessee, Chicago, Miami, DC, Portland, San Francisco, LA, locals around here in Orange County. And same thing, I connected them with lawyers in all different areas to help them get their service agreements lined up, help them make sure they had their trainer insurance. So liability, obviously. I would connect them to my equipment contacts. So in case they didn't have any equipment yet, or if their clients need equipment, I'm like, here, these are people that can actually ship equipment right now because I know equipment's backlogged. When COVID happened, I made the decision with my wife. We actually reached out to a contact of mine and we ordered thousands of dollars worth of dumbbells and kettlebells. And the only way you're going to get it is if you ordered it in bulk, as if you're opening a gym. So I basically had almost 200 plus sets of dumbbells and 50 plus sets of kettlebells delivered on a freight truck.
You were sitting on a gold mine with that.
Well, it sold fast. I basically sold it to my clients and then I sold it to their friends. And before I knew it, I was sold out of it. And then all those people were coming back to me and they were doing virtual training with me. They were doing my classes that I was using. And then they started doing
part of your
back
funnel.
in-person thing.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And to that end, tell me about, I love that approach to it because I think the biggest thing from what I heard from you say, and you didn't necessarily use this word, but what I feel as someone who's gone through the transition of leaving a comfortable boutique fitness group X like lead trainer type job to then trying to do this thing on my own. When I was the boutique trainer, I didn't have enough time in my day to develop my own brand. But it was also a little different. Like I was the only face of my gym because I was the lead trainer. I had a staff, but they only taught a couple classes a week. I wasn't personal training. So there wasn't that like opportunity to simply market myself. And I use that as a reason to just kind of be like, I'm not going to like develop this online programming because like, I don't know that that's really what I get excited about doing. But, you talked about what you essentially created for people was a network, right? Like telling them like, hey, get an attorney. I just did another podcast right before this, and the person was a food blogger, and we talked about kind of like steps you need to take on social media. And I, similarly to you, have started to do a little bit of business coaching, but not even just specifically to fitness, like even just like anybody promoting any kind of lifestyle brands. And the person who I was interviewing asked me like, what is the like top advice you have? And I was like, you have to get a lawyer. Like you need one, especially if you're going to do any kind of sponsorships or contracts. Like forget about the clients. Like if you're just going to have any sphere of influence where companies are asking you to promote product, like you need to be really careful about what you do. And so I love that that's your approach, because I think it really stresses the fact that like nobody out there, like if you see the, you know, people who have 500,000 plus, 1 million plus followers, they're not doing it by themselves. Like they had all these people around them to make it happen. And I think I'm curious what kind of feedback you've gotten from your trainer clients who have now gone off and done this on their own in terms of their success rate, if they've reflected on the fact that had they not reached out to you and kind of looked to you to give them and guide them in the right direction on like, spend more money on this, don't waste money on that, make sure you have these protections in place, blah, 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 if they think they would have been able to do it on their own. Because if anything, I think that COVID definitely tested a lot of trainers who like might have been super popular in some gym in person. And then they tried to like leave and just be like, oh, like I was popular, like, you know, in like Xbox gym. And now I'm just, the clients are just going to come like, and just by being online, it doesn't work like that.
Not that easy.
No, not even close. I think it's harder because there are more people out there who've never even have been trainers in person, and they establish themselves as online only. So like they're way ahead of you because they have such a different approach to their business model and the way they think about it and the system. It's a systems game. In terms of scaling. Game. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So have you had those conversations with your trainers, or what are your thoughts on this idea that like there are definitely people out there who just assume like, oh, I did this in person, so like it's going to be fine. They might not even know how to do like QuickBooks or like manage their like systems to get Stripe and like collect payment.
Definitely a firm believer in Stripe. I love Stripe.
Yeah, me too. I do too.
The best advice I can give people is to write out what you need. The basic things: you have to have your trainer insurance, you have to have a service agreement of some sort. In the service agreement, make sure you clarify what are your rates. And that's an important part, because what is your worth? All right. Not what it was the value due at the Xbox gym you used to be at before, but what is your value for yourself? How much is your time worth? Because that's a non-renewable resource. You can't get that hour back.
And that's what you're trading. Like that's been the hardest conversation to have. Yeah.
And then so in that service agreement, you need to make sure that the client understands your time is not refundable. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be, oh, we'll make it up later. No, they cancel on you, create a cancellation policy that you're being paid for your time. Okay. Because that is in a time slot that someone else could have had. Okay. And they will pay for it essentially. So those top 3 things will help you out with that. Equipment. Again, you don't have to have a lot of equipment. When I first started freelance, before I bought all my stuff, I literally had 2 kettlebells, 1 TRX, 205 pounds of a barbell and a bumper plate set, and some mini bands. And that was it. And that was actually very sustainable for probably about 2 months, until we moved into our new home, where we invested over $45,000 worth of fitness equipment into our garage, which I converted into a training studio. So from flooring to a cable machine to a full squat rack, dumbbells from 5 pounds to 100 pounds, kettlebells from 8 kilo to 40 kilo, fan bikes, rowing machines, treadmill, everything. So that was just me taking it to the next level. But I actually used those first 2 months to put all that money away, and then I paid for it with the first 2 months of my earnings.
Right.
So it worked out that way. I think the biggest thing for freelance trainers is just to know their worth and just don't be scared of taking the jump. It also reflects upon what is their relationship with their clients, because you know if you have a good relationship with your clients. Because if you don't, or you question it, probably not going to be a good jump for you. But you want to be able to have the clients that they will do anything and everything for you, and vice versa. And the 5 pillars I talk about, one of the things is exceeding expectations. So when I have clients travel, they're going to Miami or New York or DC or Chicago, whatever, I literally can get them set up with a personal trainer while they were there. And I can also go ahead and find out where they're staying and, hey, here are the top 5 healthiest restaurants are going to be in a 1 mile, 2
That's
mile block for
awesome.
you.
Yeah, I love that.
So going above and beyond shows my clients how invested I am in them.
Yeah.
And so I guess as a freelance trainer is, how invested are you in your clients' goals? How invested are you in your clients' lives? Because if you can't actually give a sustainable, real answer to that, if you can't say that you will put them first at times over your own family, over your own health, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that's helping pay for your life. All right, they're your bread and butter right now.
Right.
If you can't get that honest answer, then you're not gonna. I don't recommend going freelance yet.
No,
So.
I think that's a really good way to put it into perspective too, because, you know, there's a lot to it on both sides. So as the trainer who's like trying to figure out how to price, you have to think a lot about like, what if you're going to people's homes and now you're traveling? That's more of your time versus them coming to you, or you having 17 clients back to back and you don't have to physically change locations. Let's make that a positive statement in saying, I know lots of trainers who are really happy about COVID because, for example, my uncle, he used to work at a really small private health club in New York. It was called Sky. And he was there for a long time and he loved it, but he woke up at 3:45 a.m. every day and then had a full day of clients. He's 60 years old. He's in amazing shape and he has like probably the blood work of like a 45-year-old man. But now he has all of his same clients. He's able to take more days off per week and he doesn't need to start training until 7 a.m. because his clients don't necessarily need to train as early, but he cut down on his commute by over an hour of time. And he said to me, he was like, this has been the best thing that's ever happened to me because I just have more control over my life. And he's also way more traditional in the sense that like, he's very content continuing to train like via Zoom or whatever platform, having the one-on-one relationship with the clients versus necessarily getting into podcasting, getting into apparel. Like it's probably a generational thing too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a really nice thing about it too. And I hope that more people, because of the comment I made earlier about Peloton and people seeing like, oh, I do have 20 minutes to sneak something in. Hopefully, even though it ebbs and flows with that level of motivation, because you might not have the accountability of going to a class and showing up and paying penalties if you're not there. Hopefully more people will like have this big desire to move and be active, even if it's just like simple things and getting outside and going for a walk and all that jazz. But I did want to ask you another question about kind of where you are currently, because you have shared with me that you are still in school and pursuing higher education. So two-part question. First is, what prompted you to do that? And talk to me about how you tie that into your value as a coach and thinking about how much you're charging somebody for the services, whether that's, one-on-one personal training or even for the business side of things.
So yeah, as you said, I'm going back to school. I'm getting another master's. I get my master's in kinesiology, doing it virtually online. So it's convenient. So I can kind of go at my own pace. With the exception, I found I have a 12-page paper due tomorrow. So I'll be grinding that out later. But I work well under pressure and I did well when I was in school and undergrad and grad school. And I have no doubt in myself. I always want to keep learning. All right. We can always keep learning. My grandmother, who I idolized, she was a matriarch in our family. She lived to over 100. She passed this past year, fortunately not of COVID, but because of the COVID lockdown. So she was a very social butterfly. She was mentally all there. Her body was just failing, organs were failing and whatnot. But my grandma was one of the first one of the first females to graduate from Cornell back in the day.
Wow, that's
she went on to when my grandfather came back from the war, they were married, they had their kids. And she was staying at home, not working until finally one day she was like, I'm bored. So she went in to apply for a part-time job at a local pharmacy, and they hired her, but they wanted her to be full-time. She was like, well, they're like, we need to start Monday. She's like, I can't start Monday. I can start Wednesday. Like, why can't you start Monday? Well, I'm the Girl Scout troop leaders for my daughter, so I need to hand that over to someone else. So let me do this last group, and then I'll be here Monday full-time. Like, okay, cool. Anyway, the long story is she went on to become the full-time, became the director, became the general manager, worked her way up the corporate ladder. She became the COO of a medical device company, pharmaceutical company called Ciba-Geigy, which eventually got bought out later on by Novartis.
Yeah.
And she worked there for 37 years. She retired. She was bored of retirement. She went back and applied to the United Nations building for a desk job, and they she exceeded their expectations for what they needed. So I ended up sending her to Washington, D.C., where she worked for the Australian embassy and was in charge of imports and exports, and worked at 1600 Massachusetts Way in Washington, D.C.
That's so amazing.
And then she retired again, and she went on to have a honeybee business, and she was making honey with her husband, and they did this at home for well into her late 80s. And then she finally actually retired and was full-time grandma. But anyway, she inspired me, has always been an inspiration to me. And she always pushed herself to keep working or keep learning and whatnot.
Totally.
It's like, she's like, I'm not hanging up the reins. I'm not going to be one of those people. The moment you retire is the moment that your mind starts stopping. So she wanted to keep it going. So for me, education is very important. And neither one of my parents actually have a 4-year degree, let alone their master's. So for me, I wanted to be another further expert in my field.
I love that. That's such a cool story. I'm like listening to everything that she accomplished, and like, you know, even as a female, I love to hear that, because I think even what you said about the fact that she told them, like, no, I can't start on Monday. Like, I'm going to start on this date when it's good for me, etc. Being confident enough to put your foot down and not allow that limitation of existing obligations that probably may not have even gone away, being the mother and caretaker of the household, not allowing that to in any way like put her in a box that made her disqualified for a job. I think that's great, because, you know, I think that's like somewhat of a tricky part about being a female in the fitness industry. And again, maybe COVID will change this, because you don't have to leave the house as much at like the crazy hours. But that was definitely something I thought about when I decided to go this route. Like, when I do ultimately have a family, what does that look like if I have to wake up at 4 a.m. and go teach a bunch of classes and might not be home in time by the time my children are going to school because it's already 9 o'clock? Like that, there's a lot of logistics involved in that, because it is a weird schedule. You know, the second piece, I'm really curious how you then market yourself as someone who, look, like, your prices should 100% be indicative off of the investment that you've made in yourself to be the best possible coach that you can be. I had a little bit of an argument, I'll be honest, like, strong word, but the truth, with someone just last week, because I've left Charlotte, moved back to Jersey. I am a nutrition coach. My business is mostly online. So to me, like, I don't really care where I'm located necessarily. And this person felt I was going to do like an event that was going to be marketed locally, but would be on Zoom. So anyone could technically come. It was a nutrition seminar, one-on-one on macros, get an in-body scan if you were available in person, all that good stuff. Like, very straightforward, but valuable information that my clients pay top dollar to get access to. So basically, this person made the argument with me that my price point, and I won't say what it was too high because I was new to the area and just getting reestablished. And I said, I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. Like, because I even said to her, I was like, I charge more for a one-on-one 30-minute client consult for someone who's considering hiring me as a coach. Like, they haven't even made the commitment yet. And she was like, why? And I was like, well, I spent this much money on undergrad. I just got a, $5,000 Pilates certification. I have this personal training certification. I have this for nutrition. Like, I put a lot of time into it myself. And so I'm not going to get that time back. Like, forget about that piece of the time. It's like, I've invested so much money to being the most educated that I can possibly be. And there's only so much information you can get for free. And that's what differentiates me from some person who like claims to be a trainer online, right? How do you coach people through that? And how did you see as you evolved and kind of got more confidence with having a bigger client base and a bigger book, like changing that conversation in your mind, which is typically labeled as that like scarcity mindset?
So price point for me is very important because it's understanding your value. And I use my price point based on my experience, years of training, 15 plus years, my bachelor's degree in kinesiology, currently getting my master's in kinesiology. I have 5 different personal training certifications, 3 different kind of group fitness certifications, pre-postnatal, TRX, kettlebell, breath work, you name it, I have it. And I continue to keep learning. All right. So I want to be able to have the client come in and not have the obstacle of, oh, I have a frozen shoulder. My last 2 trainers can work with that. I'm like, oh, that's fine. I dealt with that. I had a client in college that had that. I had multiple clients that had frozen shoulder. I unfroze it. Like, oh, what? Really? Yeah. My experience is what's valuable. And based on right now, there's time and place. Gyms are kind of hard to come by. And also I can offer a safe training environment for the people I do train. That's my price point. And if you don't like it, I'll happily refer you to someone else that might be in your price point. but I don't want anyone to leave away and be mad at me or whatever. So I'm like, this is it.
Right.
This is my time
Exactly.
worth.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I think even just, it goes back to what you said earlier about the fact that you're even willing to refer them to someone else. That's you also going above and beyond and exceeding expectations, because in the same token, I had someone that I work with who we kind of barter for various services. She referred me as a personal trainer to a friend of hers, and the woman never got back to me. And she shared with me yesterday, she was like, yeah, she was like, I have to tell you something, don't get upset. And I was like, what is it? And she was like, my friend feels that your prices are outrageous. And I said, that's totally fine. She's not my clientele. And when I said that, she kind of like looked at me funny. And I was like, I'm not upset about that. Like because I know there's someone else out there who will pay. And I do other things that I charge at a cheaper rate because it's less of my time, not because I'm bringing less value to the table, but I can be more efficient at it. And I'm sure you feel the same way, like with your app. Of course, it's not going to be the same price point of what it is for you to do live in-person personal training. And this will be a great way for you to, again, go back to the mission of helping as many people be as healthy as possible in a different platform. And I think that I hope that if somebody is a personal trainer or any kind of coach, any kind of online fitness programming, if they listen to this, it takes like, let people reject you. Like, let them tell you like, hey, like that's too expensive. But I think even yesterday I learned a lesson, and I shared with this woman who I was having the convo with. I was like, I really wish your friend would have just called me back, because she could have been honest with me about that. Like, she just could have said like, hey, I think it's too expensive. But like, I texted her a few times and she just avoided me, but I figured out at that point what it was. But I think from like advice from a potential client perspective, like be open with the person with what you're looking for, because you don't know if they have another resource that could help you in another capacity, because we usually do.
Totally.
Yeah.
And again, that's another reason why I'm always willing to refer out, because I never want to close that door with that person, because there might come a time when they actually refer me as someone because of whatever, because of my experience, because of my price point, because of how I interacted with them.
Yeah, your personal touch and everything, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such a great conversation, and I really appreciate it. I wrap up all of my shows the same way, which is with a little lightning round of questions. So I'm just gonna do like a fast, rapid fire, 90 seconds. I don't pre-plan any of them, but we'll run through a couple. And then as the very last question, I will ask you your shameless plug, where we can find you. And we'll make sure we link all of that down in the show notes, especially with the app being just, moments away here, so people can go check it out. So you ready?
Awesome. Yes.
All right. What is the best city or your favorite city that you've ever lived in?
I love New York City.
Favorite restaurant in New York City?
Favorite restaurant in New York City? I think it's called Pizza Uno 28 or something. Uno 28.
Nice.
Stone brick oven, wood-fired pizza. It's really good.
Okay.
There's three or four locations.
Nice. So. I got to check it out. I haven't been there. Favorite, like work, any kind of movement, like whether it's a type of workout or a specific exercise?
Depends on my mood, but I predominantly love doing deadlifts. It's one of my favorite movements, no matter what, day, time, place. It's awesome.
Okay. What about for cardio? What do you like to do? That was your lift.
I recently started getting back into running. My wife and I are trying to make it a habit to do a minimum 10 miles a week, which is nothing
good for
crazy,
you,
but
I'm about to go to Orange Theory, and I only go to literally force myself to run because I hate it. It just like feels like torture to me. Do you feel that living in California has encouraged you to be like outside more and do something like that with a little more pleasure associated with it?
Totally. Yeah. It's the sunshine. It's 80. Yeah. It's almost 80 degrees here today. So
yeah. I mean, like, come on. Yeah. I saw you stand up and you had your shorts on. I was like, damn, I wish I could have my shorts on. What was the biggest adjustment for you guys moving from the East Coast to the West Coast?
The biggest adjustment for me to move from New York to California was just adapting to the people. It's a different kind of hustle out here. In New York, everyone plays off each other's camaraderie and hustle, and they're like, yeah, way to go. And like at one point, I remember one of my clubs, there's 5 of us were in the top 1% of the whole company. And then out here, the moment I became number one, I made a lot of enemies in the club.
So interesting to hear that, because did that surprise you? Because I think like maybe it's an LA, like Orange County, like thing, because you think California and you think people are laid back. And then maybe it's just like LA is its own beast because of like the like celebrity component.
I think it's people are laid back, and also it's a kind of, I guess, not cutthroat, but kind of every person for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like
It's like actors and
Yeah,
actresses, you know?
right. Exactly.
Don't you know who I am? I did that
Yeah.
commercial like
Right.
from 5 years ago.
Yeah, like good for you. Cool. That's awesome. What's your favorite sport?
I love baseball.
Okay.
I
I
played
didn't know
baseball in
what
high
you were going to
school
say,
and
but
college a little bit.
nice. That's awesome. What was your most memorable class that you programmed, whether that was for Equinox or, you know, even like dating all the way back to when you just taught group X in college?
I loved the original Ropes and Rowers. Equinox bought the class for me and they kind of dissected it and made it their own. But the original one, which launched in Brooklyn Heights back in 2013, 2014, it was a Saturday afternoon crew, 12:15 in the afternoon on a Saturday. Never think anyone would show up. I'd have 60 plus people show up every Saturday to the point where we had to put a cap on it and stop.
Wow. So clearly you were doing something right over there. That's awesome.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yes.
What's your favorite piece of workout equipment?
My favorite piece of workout equipment is a ski erg.
Oh, good. I love the ski erg. It sucks, but it's great. Least favorite? Do you have a least favorite?
Least favorite? I guess I could say the fan bike, but I love it at the same time.
Yeah.
It hurts so good.
It does hurt so good. It does. I read on Instagram a couple weeks ago in a comment, because I got really excited. Assault Fitness like took one of my photos that I took on an assault bike and they like shared it. It was cool.
That's awesome.
Someone commented on like a photo of one of their bikes that it's called the Devil. It doesn't have 3 wheels, just PSA, but someone called it the Devil's Tricycle. I thought that was really funny. It probably aptly named. Yeah. All right. Last one. What is your shameless plug? Where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Webb Travis PT. You can also find us at Turf Online Training. All right. And it's going to be turf.wodify.com, launching February 1st.
Very excited. Love it. Well, we can't wait. So everybody, please make sure you go ahead and check out all of the goodness that Webb has going on online because there's lots of it. And he is a very approachable person. So if you have questions, like slide into his DMs. I promise he will respond. He's great about that. He just randomly sent me a workout the other day that I still owe you. I'm going to do it. I will tag you.
Let's do it. Come on, girl. Get on it.
I know. It was a good one. I love anything that's like an AMRAP. So that was definitely my cup of tea for sure. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. And this has been our latest episode of The Fix. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you benefited from this message in any capacity, we would so appreciate if you would share it, tell a friend, whether they're in the fitness world, in the wellness world, or not. If you got any sort of value from it, please spread the word, spread all the positive energy and vibes, and hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.